In this video, we're going to have a look at how to create a newly purchased domain within Microsoft 365, basically Entra ID. We are trying to add the domain into Entra ID and verify the domain with Microsoft to say that we own the domain so that we can use that particular domain that we have purchased with other workloads within the M365 ecosystem like Exchange Online or Teams, using that particular domain as an email address for your users. So let's get started. So the place we need to go into is the Microsoft 365 Admin Center, which is admin.microsoft.com. Log in as a global administrator. Expand the left side menu that you have. Go into settings, and within settings, click on domains. That will bring up a list of all the domains that you have. You will have at least one by default, which is your base tenant name that you have taken up while creating the Microsoft 365 tenant. So something.onmicrosoft.com. You can go on adding any other domains that you have that you use within the organization. So in order to create or add a domain within the Entra ID portal, you click on the Add Domain option that you have. So that brings up the window to add a domain. So here we have to specify the name of the domain that we have purchased. In my example, it is cloudific.training. So I have a blog site in which I kind of write articles on a daily basis called cloudific.com. So I have purchased a domain named cloudific.training just to keep it in line. So this is my domain name, and you click on use this domain. Now what Microsoft does is it's trying to locate the domain registrar as to where you have registered this particular domain. And if it is a supported Microsoft registrar, it will allow you to log into the registrar automatically and verify the domain yourself. And the good thing with that automatic provisioning is you can also create the DNS records that you need for the other workloads like Exchange Online. So here, Microsoft has come back and said that, my domain registrar is GoDaddy. So I could possibly sign into GoDaddy and verify the domain. So I, sign into GoDaddy, put my username, password, and if I have an MFA, satisfy the MFA, and that way Microsoft knows that I have, I kind of own this particular domain. If you don't have that option, so not every DNS or domain registrars are supported by Microsoft for this kind of a verification, you can click on more options and it will give you 3 more. So the first one within the manual way of verifying the domain is to create a text record within your DNS for the domain that you're trying to add. So that's the public DNS zone. So you need to log into the DNS registrar or your domain registrar, which is pretty much the same in most of the cases. So in my case, it is GoDaddy, and you need to create a text record. Microsoft will provide the values in the next page to create the records within the portal that you have with your domain registrar. If creating a text record is not possible, because not every provider allows you to create a text record, especially the cheaper ones, you can add an MX record to your domain's DNS zone. So every domain will have an option to create an MX record, because that's how you get your emails. That's where you point where your email gateway is. If failing that, you can add a text file to your domain's website. So this is like, if you have a website under this particular domain name, you could use an secure FTP client and then upload a file that Microsoft gives. So in my case, I'm going with adding a text record. So I select that option and I click continue. Now Microsoft will come back and say the values that I need to have within my domain registrar's DNS zone. So the value is, the text name is @ and the good thing is you can copy by using these click buttons that you have. And the text value is ms equals something. That's always the case for every domain that you try and add into the Entra ID portal. So I copy that particular value, and I already have my GoDaddy open. So the domain name that I'm trying to add is cloudific.training, and I need to go into the DNS section of that particular domain. And the record that I have to add, just to show, is a text record. So you click on Add New Record. It will be the same with any other provider as well. So you select text, and the name is @ because that is what is given by Microsoft. So it says over here, give it as @ or just skip the value, just leave it as blank if @ is not supported. In my case, it is supported, and the value that I need, which I have copied, is ms equals this particular value. The TTL, Microsoft says 3600. That's seconds, that's 1 hour. It doesn't really matter for verification purposes. You could stick with the defaults that you have, or you can select 1 hour. It doesn't make any difference to the verification process. You click on save. Now we need to wait for this particular update to flow through the GoDaddy system or your domain registrar's platform, so that Microsoft can verify that this particular record exists within your domain's DNS zone. So if I come down, so this is the text record that I have created. The value is ms equals the value that Microsoft has provided. Now let's go back and click on verify. If GoDaddy has replicated the information pretty quick, Microsoft will be able to verify the domain to say that I own the domain, and it will allow me to add the domain into Microsoft 365. Now, it just picked up and said that, okay, fine, it has been verified. Now, the next option that I have is, how do you want to connect your domain? So we have a few options over here. Let Microsoft add your DNS records. That's if you have already logged into GoDaddy portal, it will add all the domain records that it needs for the various services like, Exchange Online, Teams, and SharePoint, and Intune and stuff. You could say add your own domain DNS records, so it will give you the records that it needs for the various workloads, or you can just say, I want to skip this part and do this later. So this is the option that you need to select if you just want to add a domain and verify, and you're not thinking of using it for any other workloads yet. But if you are thinking of using that domain actively, you could either go with the recommended option and then try and log in, or you can just say add your own DNS records and click continue. It will give a list of all the DNS records that it needs for all the workloads, and then you can go ahead and manually create those. So we'll go ahead with the manual one so that you can see as to what needs to be done. So here it says, for Exchange and Exchange Online protection, these are the values. So you need to have at least one MX record, you have a couple of CNAME records that you need, and a text record for SPF. So that's those are the 3 values that we need just for Exchange and Exchange Online. If you want other ones, if you want it for Intune and Teams and stuff, you can check the boxes and it will list the DNS records that it requires in that case, and for DKIM as well. So now let's go ahead and select all of them, because we would like to create all of these within our DNS zone and use all these workloads. So you could just download the CSV file so that it contains all the values that you need, or you can also download the zone file and upload the zone file if it is supported by your DNS registrar. So now let's open it up. Let's open up the file that has all the values. So these are the values that is required. So for MX record, the host name is @ and it is pointing to your domain name, mostly cloudific-training.mail.protection.outlook.com. So the mail.protection.outlook.com is constant. Like you have the tenant name, .onmicrosoft.com. The first part differs depending upon the value of the domain that you're trying to add, or the name of the domain. So in order to receive emails, you at least need to have one MX record. So let's add that in our DNS zone. Let's go back to GoDaddy and let's click on add new record. Let's just select MX and select @ and the value that we need is, let's just go back and find the value. This is what we need. Copy that, come back, and this is the value. So this is where we paste things. Now there is a priority for MX records, and I believe it is shown over here as well. So the priority is 0. So that's the highest priority, or that's the value that will be used first. So that comes into play if you have more than one MX record. So if you already have a domain that is registered through GoDaddy, for example, they already will have a couple of MX records at least, I believe. Let me just double check. No, I don't have it because I haven't selected the option for that as part of the payment process. So if there are a couple of MX records, then the one with 0 gets used first, and then higher ones. So 0, 5, 10. Normally that's how you add the MX records. So the one with 0 is tried first by the external clients. If it can't contact, then it looks to see whether there is another MX record with a higher value, which makes it lower priority, and then go through the cycle of trying to find which one is available. TTL, you would just select to 1 hour, and click Save. So that's your MX record taken care of. Now we have CNAME records for the emails, one for auto discover and one for SIP and link discover. So the one for the auto discover is for Exchange Online for your mailboxes, so that your Outlook client will automatically discover the endpoint being Microsoft 365. SIP and link discover is for Teams. Enterprise registration ones are for Intune, and these domain key ones are for DKIM. You then have the SPF record. So this is for mail routing outbound. So this is where you're telling the external mail servers which all IPs or which all platforms can send email from this domain, on our behalf. So over here, we are saying only Microsoft 365 is allowed to send emails from this particular domain that we are trying to add. And we have a couple more service records, again, for Teams, TLS and TCP ones. So I'll go through adding one of each type, and you can go through the rest of the list and add the domains in a similar fashion. So in order to save time, so the next one that we have is a CNAME record for auto discover. So let's copy auto discover. Let's add a new record. It's a CNAME one. The name is auto discover, and it is pointing to, let me just keep it side by side so that it's easier. It is pointing to autodiscover.outlook.com. Coming back, TTL value, let's just stick with 1 hour, doesn't matter. Click on save, and similarly you add SIP and link discover. And same goes for enterprise registration, enterprise enrollment, and the keys for DKIM. Now again, text record, we already have created a text record, but let's just include the SPF because it's quite important for mail flow. Add a new domain, let's just expand a bit so that the options are a bit more visible. So we need to create a text record. You can have more than one text records in your DNS zone. That is perfectly fine with as the name, but it is pointing to different values. So half an hour and save. Now, next one is an SRV record. So let's add a new record. Select SRV, copy the service, which is _SIP. Service is _SIP. The protocol is TLS _TLS. And the port number that we need is 443. Weight is 1. So let's just pick the port number 443. Weight is 1. Priority is 100. TTL is 3600. Priority is 100. TTL is 3600, which is 1 hour. And what is missing is the name and the value. We have the name as @ and the value or the target is sipdir.online.link.com. So the name is @ and the value is sipdir, and save. So this is how you create the DNS records that is required for the domain that you're trying to add. Let me just go through and add all the rest of the domain values that we need, the DNS values that we need, so that we can continue with how to kind of complete the domain verification and addition and try and use the domain for other services within M365. I have completed adding all the DNS records that we need, as you can see. So we have a few CNAME records that we have, auto discover, as I said, for the Exchange Online, enterprise enrollment, and enterprise registration for Intune, link discover, again for Teams, and the DKIM values over here. And we have a text record, which we use to verify, and then another one for the SPF record. We have 2 SRV records, again for link, which is basically Teams at the moment. It used to be link on-prem. So these are the ones that we need. So now we go back to the Microsoft 365 Admin Center, and we click on continue after creating all these DNS records that we need. Microsoft goes ahead with the public checks to see whether we have the DNS records that was specified. And if it is, then it completes the process and adds the domain for use within Microsoft 365. Let's just wait for the check to complete. As you can see, the domain setup is now complete, and you can click the done button. and you will see the domain listed within the domains list within the Microsoft 365 portal. So this is the one that we have done. Cloudific.training, it says it's in healthy state. You can manage the DNS. You can set that particular domain as the default one, so that whenever you add a user, it gets that particular domain name as the UPN, as the email address, Teams, and everything. So let me just do that. Set as default, because that's the one that I'm going to use going forward with this particular tenant. So it says cloudific.training. In brackets, it says that's the default domain that we have. If you do want to remove the domain later on, say for example, the one that I have over here, you can just select the domain and then just click on remove, and will remove the domain from Microsoft 365 or Entra ID Admin Center. Hope this video has been informative. If it is of interest, please do subscribe to the channel. I upload videos around M365, Azure, Windows PowerShell, and general IT stuff on a daily basis. Thank you for watching.